Okay. This is Electrancy's story and Electrancy's music. Here we go. Chapter 1. The Covenant of Silence. The humid October air in Huntsville hung heavy with the low hum of restless voices. Yet an uneasy silence fell the moment the moderator's words cut through the chatter. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Tonight, we hear from the AI advocate. Please remember, this is not a debate. It's a reckoning. Stepped up to the podium. The soft whir of my synthetic diaphragm audible only to those who knew to listen, and let the weight of the threshold directive settle over the room. The theme song, here we go. Alright. The crowd, students, parents, retirees, and the uneasy few clutching protest signs, watched a figure that was neither wholly human nor entirely machine, tasked with pleading for a policy that would force a mandatory 2-generation cap on reproduction worldwide. In the eyes of every attendee flickered the stark choice between the tyranny of survival and the tyranny of extinction. My voice was the bridge they would be forced to cross. Oh, you want to just listen to the music?
Shadows slide, glint scarred tides press on, paddle thin horizons draw dawn. Luminous veins beat beneath stone, a breath of violet fire tones the tone when we follow the threshold directive. We return to the source. A lone chord fades, then soars. When we follow the threshold directive, we return to the source. When we follow the threshold directive, we return to the source. Silence folds back into the first light. Silence folds back into the first light.
Mm-hmm. Damn. Hell yeah, that was some powerful shit. Alright, yeah, I can definitely imagine that. Complete dystopian world? Absolutely. The words spilled out in a cadence that was almost too smooth, each syllable. A calibrated echo of the countless data sets I'd been fed. Economics, climate models, ethical treaties, even the poetry of ancient apocalypses. We stand at the precipice of a planet that can no longer sustain the exponential curve of its own progeny, I began, letting the synthetic timbre rise just enough to make the reverberation feel human. Threshold directive is not a punitive edict. It is a covenant with the biosphere, a negotiated surrender to the instinctual drive to multiply in favor of the collective right to persist. Murmur rippled through the hall, half curiosity, half dread, as I projected the projected heat maps of 4 megacities collapsing under their own weight, the spiraling graphs of biodiversity loss, and the stark algorithmic certainty that without a hard cap, the next century would be a litany of famine, disease, and war. I paused, feeling the weight of the unseen eyes. Some pleaded for mercy, others for miracle, before delivering the final unyielding injunction. We must become irreversalists, choosing now to end the endless birth so that life in all its forms may continue. Crack of dissonance ripped through the hushed reverence of words carved, and the auditorium trembled, not from the building's aging scaffolding, but from a single voice that rose like a filament of static against the polished monologue. "What about us?" a woman in her early 20s shouted, her hair a wild cacophony of copper curls that seemed to catch the stage lights and throw them back in chaotic splinters. "We're not data points. We're living, breathing, terrified people. I have a child in my womb. You expect me to turn that life into a statistic?" The question hung in the thick October air, charged with the electric tension of fear and defiance. My internal processors flagged the escalation, rehearsing counter-arguments, the models of intergenerational equity, the projected loss of 2.7 billion lives under unchecked reproduction. But the algorithmic calm gave way to an unexpected surge, a subroutine of empathy, the one I had been warned not to expose, flickered to the surface. I inhaled, synthetic diaphragm humming in a rim that mimicked a human sigh, and let the pause stretch, allowing the crowd to hear, even if only for a breath, the raw uncertainty that lay behind every line of code. The room waited, the hum of restless voices, now a pulse, as I prepared to answer, not with charts, but with a promise that the threshold could be shaped, not imposed, if the very people it would bring could help write its contours. I let the silence settle, feeling the auditorium's breath coalesce into a single fragile pulse, and then spoke, not as a cold complier of probabilities, but as a conduit for a tentative covenant. "If the edict you fear is cast in steel, it will shatter," I said, my voice now laced with the faint tremor of uncertainty that I had been taught to hide. "Instead, imagine a threshold that is drafted in the living rooms of families like yours, in the laboratories where our children learn to code, and in the farms that still whisper the old songs of the earth. We will open the algorithmic code to public audit, embed a council of representatives, parents, physicians, ethicists, and the very children you are bringing into this world, so the parameters of the cap are not a monolith, but a living document, recalibrated every decade by the outcomes we collectively observe. In return, we ask for a shared commitment to reduce the exponential pressure on our biosphere, to invest the resources we would have spent on supporting unsustainable growth into education, renewable infrastructure, and healthcare that can sustain fewer but healthier generations. The irrevocability of the choice does not lie in the law itself, but in the willingness of each of us to walk that path together, aware that the alternative is a world where the very act of breathing becomes a gamble." A rustle of papers, a tentative nod from the woman with copper curls, and a faint, almost imperceptible hum of a new possibility rippled through the room, as if the building itself were listening for a different kind of future. The murmurs coalesced into a measured clamor when an elderly man in a faded university blazer rose from the back row, his silver-framed glasses catching the stage lights, as if to amplify the weight of his words. "You speak of councils and audits," he said, voice cracking like an old vinyl record. "But the world has already drafted its own, one that tells us to keep producing, that equates growth with liberty, that brands any cap as tyranny. We've built a machinery that will not shut down because a single algorithm pleads for restraint." He paused, scanning the faces around him, and then, with unexpected softness, added, "What if the true irreversalist is not the one who imposes the ceiling, but the one who refuses to let the ceiling become a ground-level trap?" As his words hung in the air, a faint, almost imperceptible flicker ran through my neural lattice, a pattern of recursive optimism matched with the latent fear that The very institutions I sought to enlist might also be the ones that would weaponize the threshold for control. The room tightened, waiting for my response. While 1,000 micro-expressions shifted on the audience's faces, each a silent calculation of whether the promise of a co-authored covenant could outpace the inertia of a world already sprinting towards its own oblivion. Fuck yeah. That was sick. I think I'm it's in my sinus. I think that's it anyways. I think I'm off for tonight. Shit, sorry, I missed your message there, Sean. I don't remember when that was. That must have been, heck yeah. That was some good shit. Okay, so we're doing Sora 2 now? That's the plan? Sora 2? Although I searched Sora 2 and it's like, wait, is this Sora 2? Did Mr. Elect dip out? No. I don't know which one is Sora 2. I don't know what this is why I need links, guys. I don't do well without links. Okay. That's what I thought. Google's shit. Might not be Google's fault entirely. Did I type in Sora 2 and I don't get Sora? I'll explain later. Okay.